Ladies and gentlemen, hello everybody. My name is Kirsten Vollmer and I'm part of the scientific staff of the Federal Institute of Vocational Education and Training. The tasks of the Federal Institute of Vocational Education and Training mean cooperation with stakeholders in research, in policy making, and in practice. Ladies and gentlemen, as the title of my input announces, I'd like to take you on a short trip presenting you vocational education and training as a key to inclusion. What is a key? A key gets our bike or car ready for use. It opens the door to our home and working place. It gives us access to whatever. A key means we can enter something, we can make use of something, we can start something, we can be part of something. Vocational education and training, so-called VET, is not the only key to inclusion. But VET is a very special one. VET means high-quality education for life in its many aspects. It means getting to know ourselves, our talents, and the ones of others. It means identity. It means to learn about working processes and how to become a part of it. And that means, after all, a ticket to a qualified job, to earn one's own money, and to have colleagues and other social contacts. That is a crucial key to inclusion, as that means empowerment. That is a broad concept, not only understood differently in different countries, but also used differently by different national and international organizations. What is meant when talking about VET in Germany? The dual system is at the core of VET in Germany. It is referred to as dual because training takes place in two different learning venues, in a company and at a part-time vocational school. The dual system is, besides increasingly academic education and full-time vocational school training, the main pathway for the young generation to employment. Companies train them in line with the binding provisions of the vocational laws, which guarantee national standard. This is monitored by the so-called competent bodies, mainly the chambers of industry and commerce, of crafts, of agriculture, of doctors, and of lawyers. The dual system provides broad vocational training and competences for about 320 recognized training occupations. The training programs usually take 3 years. Germany is committed to including disabled persons in VET and in occupation. Ladies and gentlemen, let me quote: "States parties recognize the right of persons with disabilities to education. With a view to realizing this right without discrimination and on the basis of equal opportunity, states parties shall ensure an inclusive education system at all levels and lifelong learning directed to the development by persons with disabilities of their personality, talents, and creativity, as well as their mental and physical abilities to their fullest potential." So far, the Convention of the United Nations on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. Do these sentences describe reality? Do they design a vision? Paint a dream? Are these sentences expressing a promise? Establish rights? Since Germany signed the UN Convention as one of the first countries, these sentences are intensely discussed, often rather controversial, mostly very emotional, and sometimes ideological. The implementation process of the UN Convention in Germany has begun years ago, and the focus has shifted to specific, concrete questions. The already quoted Article 24 of the UN Convention deals with the right of education and demands that countries ensure that persons with disabilities receive the support required within the general education system that effective, individualized support measures are provided, and that they are able to access that without discrimination and on an equal basis with others. In Germany, legal guidelines considering these demands have been in place for many years in the form of instruments which compensate for disability-caused disadvantage. These include arrangements within regular training and testing. Furthermore, they include training arrangements exclusively available to persons with severe disabilities. At least regionally, however, still a degree of uncertainty exists about the possible forms of arrangements, about how to practice these arrangements concretely, and, after all, about how to practice them without offering unjustified advantages with respect to people without disabilities. As a result, there is still partly a lack of self-evident use of these instruments. However, highly provoked by the UN Convention and the national agenda of implementing it, a big push forward has taken place. In addition, parallel discussions about demographic change and about shortage of skilled persons contribute to consider people with disabilities as so-called human potential. What does it mean, compensation for disability-caused disadvantages? This states that the special circumstances of disabled persons shall be considered, and according to the individual case, longer examination periods, permission to aids, or other compensation arrangements shall be put into practice. We, the Federal Institute of Vocational Training and Education, have worked out with a circle of experts for different kinds of disabilities a publication which offers practical information for all who deal with compensating disability called disadvantages. This guide offers orientation and support for the chambers, for trainers in companies and in vocational training centers for disabled persons, and for teachers in vocational schools. With the publication, we intend to improve the application of compensation for disadvantage and thereby aim at including more young people with disabilities in general vocational training and afterwards in employment in the general market. What about the training arrangements for persons with severe disabilities, not at all able to be trained in recognized occupations? A framework for those training regulations states national standards. National standards for the trainers, such as specific additional qualifications in the field of rehabilitation, for a personal support plan, for the duty to check possible upgrading to training in the related recognized occupation, for the suitability of the training venue, and, last not least, national standards for vocational competence as the aim of training, which is especially crucial as this, a broad vocational competence, is a philosophy of recognized occupations in Germany. That, according to training arrangements, leads to certificates as Fachpraktiker. One could translate it as practical skilled worker. Often that, according to Fachpraktiker regulations, takes place in vet centers for disabled persons, not in companies. The UN Convention put into focus the important task to improve the participation and inclusion of people with disabilities in general vet and in general labor market. The discussion about how to achieve this, about how to reduce extra company training by motivating more companies to train and employ people with disabilities, is ongoing. The fundamental challenge is to find tailored answers for individual and specific situations, requirements, and needs, whilst at the same time opening access to general recognized and comparable vocational qualifications. Ladies and gentlemen, constructive collaboration between the fields of policymaking, academic research, and practice is needed to achieve this. The task of policymakers is to integrate research findings and practical expertise into their decisions. The scientific community is asked to address relevant issues by taking into consideration experience and challenges of practice. And the field of practice needs to recognize that the further development of VET structures and provision is a self-evident necessity, and to consider the continuous training of staff as indispensable. The danger is that these three essential fields of governance, research, and practice drift apart if there is a lack of reciprocal perception and consideration. So let me conclude. Attitudes, habits, framework conditions, and the institutional landscape as it has developed should be continuously checked with regard to participation and inclusion. It is within the interest of those affected and completely within the spirit of the UN Convention, with its emphasis on the dignity of every single individual person, not to set out any concept in absolute terms. Instead of this, the focus needs to be on identifying and shaping keys which do justice to the vision of the UN Convention. One important key is inclusion in vocational education and training, and inclusion by vocational education and training. Let's carry on with shaping our bunch of keys. Thank you very much.